Hello, everybody, and welcome. This session is being recorded, and my name is Lori Berry, and I am the moderator for this ADEIL conference session. And before we begin, on behalf of ADEIL, we would like to thank our generous sponsor, Noodle, and our host, Old Dominion University. And we are thankful for their contributions in making this event possible. We will also be randomly selecting winners at each conference session for prizes and swag, and I'll announce the winner at the end of the session. And before leaving, I'll need to get the winner's name and email address. Thank you for joining us for Strategies for Online Discussions in a World with AI, and please welcome Dr. Hodges.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Depending, I guess, on where you are in the world. For me, it's morning. This is my first ADEIL, and I've been really impressed with the organization of the conference so far, and I appreciate the help of people like Rick and Lori with getting the session moving. So I am Chuck Hodges from Georgia Southern University. If you're not familiar with that, it's about 50 miles west of Savannah, Georgia. And I'm here today to talk about some of my experimentation with online discussions in a world with AI. Just a little bit of background. I've been teaching fully online for 15 years, probably taught my first online class 20 years ago. And my context is teaching graduate education students. That's kind of where this is coming from. So what I'm going to be talking about today is asynchronous online discussions. That's the context that I work in all the time, and I know that's a popular one for everyone, although some people do synchronous discussions. For this topic, the asynchronous, I think, is a little bit more important because with the synchronous discussions, you obviously see people talking and communicating. So this is no surprise, but online discussions have been a primary tool used in online learning. I do have references at the end of the slides if anybody's interested in those. This study in 2017 by Rode and colleagues found that in the context of higher education, threaded discussion boards were in the top 10 most utilized features of a learning management system. It's the only one in the top 10 that involved interaction between, like real interaction between a instructor and a student. If you have any guesses to what the other top 10 items were, pop them in the chat box. Give you just a second. So we're talking about top 10 most utilized features of a learning management system. Anybody have any feedback there? Direct messaging. That didn't actually show up in the top 10. Feedback, discussion boards. Yes, discussion boards were in the top 10. Gradebook, yes, definitely. Feedback on assignments and quizzes. The top 10 actually was filled with things like gradebook, announcements, distributing files and those sort of things, accepting files through Dropboxes. And in that top 10, in this particular study, asynchronous discussions were the only thing in the top 10 where you had instructors and students communicating, back and forth rather than just kind of passing off things. So thanks for your participation there. That's nice to see. So, online discussions are obviously popular. If you teach online, you know that already, and it's a popular feature of an LMS. So why are we going to use them? Well, many studies and frameworks already say that learning is a social behavior. Discussion is a good way to hash out ideas and different concepts. And we have these other various, promotions, interaction with learners and teachers. And so it's a social endeavor. It's a crucial motivator. It uh, informs efforts to learn and satisfaction in courses. And if you're not just feel like you've got this solo off in the distance interaction or no interaction, it's a third dimension. It's like one of those third places where people can have community and discuss things. And it's, community in an online course is well documented as one of those elements of a course that helps with uh, a feeling of connection and helps with uh, continued enrollment. So, that's why people use discussion so much. They're also just pretty handy to use. It's pretty easy to come up with that. Um, so you've probably seen this if you use this yourself. I'm certainly not poking fingers at you. Um, but a very popular, for whatever reason, format of asynchronous online discussions is the post once, reply twice. Um, you've probably seen it. You might have used it. I know I used it earlier in my days of online teaching. Um, is this popular design for online discussions appropriate in a setting where students have easy access to generative AI? Today, when I'm talking about generative AI, I'm focusing primarily on three tools: Google's Bard, ChatGPT, and Anthropic's Claude. There may be others. These tools are popping up all the time. I personally consider those kind of the three top most popular tools. Okay. So, what what do you think is it about this question? Is this popular design of post once, reply twice still valid with generative AI tools? Pop things in the chat box if you think so. I'm not a big fan. Me either, Melissa. Thank you for contributing. I'm not a big fan of that format either. I come across a lot of colleagues in my faculty development work that do those. I'm with Melissa. Not a big fan. Okay. Ditto. Okay. Better than a free for all or no structure. Probably so, David. Yeah, the free for all is not very good. Very common. Okay. Well, it seems like people are kind of with me, actually. It's a place to start. It does provide some instruction, but there's some folks here who aren't a big fan. I myself grew a little disillusioned with it. Okay. Um, so here's my answer. My answer is it's not good enough in a world with generative AI. It doesn't take very long for you to play around with the tools. If you have a discussion that uses that format, or if you could just find one, ask a colleague for one, and play around with some of these tools, you're going to find that students can probably work right through these discussions pretty easily with these new tools that they have access to. I personally haven't been like that format for a long time. Okay. Um, like anybody else, when I started teaching online, it's something that somebody recommended to me. I was using it, and it became to be kind of tedious. So what do I do instead? Now, this is me. This is what I do instead of that type of discussion, even before generative AI. So I have been very interested in the work around generative learning. Um, to me, the best folks talking about that right now are these authors, Fiorella and Meyer. You may know Richard Meyer from his work with multimedia learning, but Fiorella is one of his students. Generative learning encompasses a collection of methods and approaches that foster active and substantial learning by motivating learners to construct their own knowledge. This great study by Fiorella and Meyer, this great paper, they have 8 fundamental generative learning strategies. And with that, they present evidence from the literature about the effectiveness of these things for learning. And they actually give kind of meaningful practitioner advice on how to use them. So I look at these 8 different types of strategies as having pretty solid theoretical backing for using them in a learning scenario. Here are the 8 generative learning strategies as written by Fiorella and Meyer. Each one of these is learning by. So learning by summarizing, learning by mapping, learning by drawing, imagining, enacting, self-testing, self-explaining, and teaching. If you've read a lot of ed psych, maybe you're an educational psychologist, none of this is going to be surprising. You'll see some of this around student success literature and how to study, and how, if you read a chapter, rereading the chapter isn't particularly a useful strategy. But if you read a chapter and then try to summarize it in your own words, that's actually a useful learning strategy. Perhaps you read a chapter, read a paper, have some type of experience, and you do a concept map or a drawing of that. Concept mapping often, it's, if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of a graphical outlining with concepts connected by lines or different types that represent how the concepts are connected. Drawing, mapping is a type of drawing, it has a little bit more to it. Drawing might be for different processes. So if you're talking about the water cycle or something like that, having actually drawing this out, reading about it, looking at it, and doing your own drawing helps. Imagining is a little bit out there for me, but imagining how different concepts work together. Enacting, learning by enacting. If you think this isn't the only example, but think about people using manipulatives in a math course, or using actual physical objects in an engineering scenario. And then self-testing, read something, make up your own test questions, self-quizzing, self-explaining. If you've looked at something, can you write out or talk about what it is and then check your understanding versus the original material? And then, of course, I think we've all seen that you really learn something well when you have to teach it to others. So these are the 8 generative learning strategies that Fiorella and Meyer have identified. Beyond online teaching, I think these are great strategies, and the reference at the end, you might want to check it out. For me, for today, and for some things I've been doing in my classes, I have focused on the mapping and drawing generative learning strategies. I'm teaching graduate level education courses. We talk about technology infrastructure in schools. We talk about how technology personnel are organized in schools. And we also just look at other theoretical materials. So having students do concept mapping or drawing of perhaps an organizational diagram for how the different technology people work in schools, those are useful tasks that kind of lend their way to mapping and drawing. I do tell my students, I give them resources on how to create a concept map, because some of them don't know what this is. So I'll give them some resources on how to create a concept map. I tell them up front that as long as things are legible, I'm not grading them on their artwork. I give them links to digital tools that they can use to do concept mapping or drawing. But I also tell my students that it's perfectly okay to write things out, draw things out on paper, and snap a picture with your phone and upload that. That it's that process for them of the mapping and drawing that I want them to help them learn the material. And the artifacts, they need to be somewhat legible, but I'm not grading them on their artistic ability. So focus on mapping and drawing. can generative AI do this activity? Can it, wait a minute. Okay, there we go. Let's go back to my activity. So this is a typical discussion activity for me now um, in my classes. I will tell you that I'm not a fan of the weekly discussion. In a 16-week course, my classes probably have 4 to 5 discussions that I try to get a little bit more depth into rather than having a weekly discussion. So I ask my students usually to read, watch, list, or investigate something. So it might be a book chapter, it might be a research article, it might be a YouTube video. Um, List, it's actually listen, not list. It might be some type of a podcast episode, or they might have to investigate something in their own personal context. Um, Most of my students are teachers in schools, and they're scattered across districts all over the southeastern United States. So I'm a firm believer in them looking at their personal context, their personal situation to learn and better understand what's happening there. Um, so, for example, what I might have them do is if they're uh, in their school district, I might want them to look at their school district's technology plan and then draw a concept map representing what's in the plan. How are the pieces connected? What pieces are there? Or I might ask them to look at the technology personnel in their district and draw a concept map for how those people are related or an organizational diagram. So they might have technology coaches, they might have school librarians, school library media specialists, um, some people in the central office who were involved with information technology aspects, all of these people and how are they interconnected and how they work. I've got students in rural districts, very rural, very much poverty districts, urban districts, all across the Southeast. They make those concept maps and they post their map. That's their initial post. So that post once is their map. And I like them to embed it in the discussion, but if they want to provide a link to it somewhere else, that's okay. And then the rest of the discussion is for them to look at their classmates' diagrams, which are images, usually some type like a PNG file or a JPEG or even a PDF in some cases. And they compare and contrast their concept maps with other people. Now, if we're learning about a particular concept, then obviously their concept maps should be somewhat similar. And through this compare and contrast, they may find themselves things that they left off, or they may find connections that they didn't, see. Or it might be kind of confirmatory that, I've got my concept map and it seems to be matching up with what other people got. Um, a lot of the literature on concept mapping says that me sharing my map with them helps them understand it, do that near the end so that they see this expert map. So if it's one thing that they're all studying, then the map should be the same. But in an exercise like looking at their own technology infrastructure in their school systems, it allows students to see how things can vary across different places. Sometimes even very rural districts will have much different infrastructures for them to talk about and kind of observe. Okay, so this was the question. Having the students create a concept map, probably based on their own personal context, posting that and then discussing it, do you think that generative AI can help them with this activity? So in the chat box, you can do a simple yes or no, or you can provide a little bit more if you want to. People are saying yes. Okay. I appreciate your participation, Kermitra. Yes, yes, yes. I think it can help with synthesis. Give them a place to start. Of course. If worded correctly, AI can do anything. That's a great comment. Um, well, I see a lot of people saying yes as a co-pilot, and I will agree and disagree at the same time. If the students are working from, say, a particular reading, they can plug that into the AI, and the AI will give them outline points. So in that case, you can see that it's where the people are saying, yes, it's a good starting point. It can definitely help. From a reading, that's true. If the students are working on something from their own particular context, Aaron's comment here of I do think that most students would find it complicated to get AI to do this for them. Um, I agree with that for sure. So if students are working from their own personal context, there's really nothing for them usually to feed in to the AI engines. So they're going to have to create for themselves the information that they're going to feed into the AI, which then might help them with kind of outline points to make the concept map. Um, so far, in my experience with these concept mapping tasks, and I play around pretty extensively with Bard and Claude and ChatGPT, um, the paid version of ChatGPT, in fact. So I wanted to really see what its strongest muscle could do for me. Um, I don't have examples to share today specifically on the screen because I didn't ask students permission to share their work. But I asked students to make in one course a concept map for the SIP evaluation model. If you're familiar with CIPP. And the students read a book chapter on SIP and they made these graphics. I fed those graphics into each of these engines, and I'll tell you a little bit about my success with this. So this is what the students got. I gave these tools 3 different concept maps about the same concept, the SIP evaluation model. Then I asked, what are these images of? What are these images of? Bard, now these were decent images, decent concept maps, but they were different. Bard gave me the first one back and said, this is a graphic displaying the SIP evaluation model. And I thought, oh, okay, it's smarter. It's pretty smart. The other 2, which were reasonable models of the SIP evaluation model, Bard told me one was the ADDIE instructional design process. There was nothing in the image about the ADDIE instructional design process. And in the third one, it gave me some other random process. It had nothing to do with education even. So in that case, Bard could not really interpret the images with any particular expertise. The free version of Claude, which I find to be very good at text-based activities, it would look at the images. They had to be PDF. It wouldn't look at just PNG or JPEG images. It had to be PDF. And it could tell me what the images were about. It would say that they were SIP models, depictions of the SIP process. But when I ask it to compare and contrast the images across those, it completely fell apart. It could tell me in general what the images were, but it couldn't tell me, for instance, in the drawings, there might be dotted line connections between concepts, or there might be different colors that represent different aspects of the SIP evaluation model. It basically could kind of figure out the text from the image that it represented the SIP evaluation model. But beyond that, it was failing. The paid version of ChatGPT was similar. It could tell me what the images were about. One of the images, it was failing on that as well, but it could not interpret graphical elements of the connections, what the colors might mean, what hierarchy might mean within the images. So I've been pretty pleased that, note I say so far in my slide, in my experience, this type of concept mapping and compare and contrast is kind of breaking the AI. Now, I'm the first to admit these tools are getting better all the time, and this may not be a strategy, to kind of short circuit AI forever. But at least for now, even with the most powerful tools you can pay for, it's kind of working. Um, I've also been making some similar exercises. I have my students do article critiques. Um, so Karen asks if I can reverse the process and ask AI to create a concept map. I haven't been able to successfully get it to do that. And a lot of the art kind of image programs are more art based and they struggle with um, getting text into the images. A lot of them, not all the tools. And the whole process of trying to get into the AI, what the hierarchy might be, what the colors might be, I think most students would probably find it easier just to pull out a legal pad and draw a picture. Um, so I've also been working on article critiques because sometimes my students will do article critiques. Um, since that's all text based, that's a little bit more um, easily done by these text based tools. Where I'm going with that is maybe going with some social annotation with perusal or hypothesis. But even in those cases, the engines will be able to absorb the text from the articles, but maybe not make the annotations exactly where they should be or in exactly great context. So what I was here today to talk about was my use with the concept mapping and using that as a point of a post and the material for the discussion. And so far, I'm satisfied that the students are going to have to put in some work and not just do this as they could with potentially a post once, reply twice format. So I appreciate you being here. I know some people have asked questions as we've gone. I did save time for um, questions. So I'm going to stop my screen share, and that's the end of the presentation. But I'm happy to talk about online discussions and what I've been trying, or I would love to hear what you've been trying.
Dr. Hodges, there is a question in the chat in relation to about the images, and can you reverse the process of AI? Can you submit the SIP and ask AI to create a concept map? So sort of the reversed process of you showing what it was and sharing out what it thinks it is, but rather asking it to create the concept map.
Yeah, I haven't been successful in getting it to do that. That most of these engines don't want to create artwork. The ones that are really good at text don't want to create art, and the ones that will create art are more about artistry um, than drawing something with where hierarchy and color and different types of connections uh, actually are important. So far, that reversing that process hasn't been that great. Uh, yes, I see Kermitra says that it helped her organize the information, which is definitely true. And as I noted in the chapter there, if somebody's working from a text-based chapter, they might be able to ask, well, they might be able, they can ask these images or these engines to outline or summarize the content. That process with the student moving through there and then translating it into some type of art and determining if what connections are important, the types of connections. Um, I would say there that something like ChatGPT might be assisting them a bit, but it's a big leap to get it to do actually to create the concept map. Yes, Jacob. Uh, the output is only as good as what you give it. And there's definitely kind of a prompt, what people are calling prompt engineering, that you need to kind of refine. And sometimes it does seem like more work to try to prompt the AI than to get it to work to do what you want it to. I think students will put in a lot of effort to try to get out of doing something, so they may be doing that. How do I grade discussions? Grading discussions, um, for me, I tell the students that there's a rubric involved with, you know, did they post on time? Are they actually participating in the discussion? It's very kind of holistic. There are rubric elements for what they do. And it's more of a participation grade, although they do have to meet deadlines for participation. Deadlines for, when they do things. I usually do my discussions over a course of 2 weeks. They have the first week to read and synthesize whatever it is they have to do, make their concept map, post it, and then the class has a week following to do the discussion about what they've created. That was another change for me over time. The weekly discussion, everything was so crammed. I feel like I get a little bit richer responses if I give them a week to create and then a week to kind of discuss.
There's another question in the chat, Dr. Hodges. It says, Kermitra says, I'm curious with plagiarism and using ChatGPT. Have you seen the work being cited in discussions or a direct application from the AI?
Have you seen the work being cited? So I'm not quite sure I understand about what you have you seen the work being cited in discussions? Um, I'm quite sure my students are using ChatGPT for various assignments, and I'm trying to decide right now kind of what type of scaffolding to give them around that. I don't have any course policies about it except my general academic integrity statements of the work you present is your own. And what does that mean in the world of AI? Because it's not exactly copy paste plagiarism. It's um, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. Um, I have had a few students for multiple semesters, and I noticed that some of their writing has dramatically improved this semester. Um, I'm curious about whether they're using ChatGPT to kind of fine tune or refine their work, or just do their work. Um, so we'll see. I'm still kind of working around some of that.
And that's exactly why I was asking that, just because even like in the APA guidebook, there's no, like, they don't have a chapter on using AI just yet. So that's part
Mm-hmm.
of why. And I know it was like a confusing question, but that's exactly what I was asking. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And I really appreciate the interaction here. This is one of the better presentations I've given in terms of attendees actually asking things and providing commentary. I've been doing faculty development workshops this whole semester on my campus, and one of the points that I really drive home and hope that they get out of that is the text from these generative AI tools defeats plagiarism detection. Don't think you can get it with those kind of turn it in type tools. Um, I guess there's a bit of a technology arms race going on now in terms of detection, but they seem to be not really very reliable. I read a really nice paper the other day from some linguists who said, no, you can't really tell. It's not detectable. Certainly not well enough to start failing students or kicking them out of school. So I think we need to think hard about, what are we going to do with these tools? Yes, Melissa, my dad's a software engineer and he loves ChatGPT. I've been working with some computer scientists on campus and just in discussions, and they said this is a problem for them because these tools whip out the code like no tomorrow. Um, like like your dad, my son is a software engineer in Atlanta, and he said these tools are quite handy to use. Yeah, thanks, Heather, for that link to the APA blog, which is an excellent resource. I like the official APA resources, and that blog is a good one to follow. And a lot of professional the academic publishers are saying that you can use ChatGPT for your data analysis or whatever, but you have to disclose its use and how it was used. You have to tell what tool you use, how you used it. Um, I'm struggling with that myself. I mean, I'll follow the rules that they have, but if detection isn't possible, what happens when people break the rules? Where are we going to go with this? So, um,
There's a question in the chat, kind of turning it on the other end of what are the best strategies to use AI to grade online discussions? Do you have any comment on that or response?
okay, yes, using it for faculty efficiency, from the instructor's point of view. I have been hesitant to use AI to grade students' work because these things are proprietary engines, and I don't want to upload my student work into these things without their permission, without the university's permission. It seems a little odd to me to submit their work to these tools myself. Um, I use the tools myself because maybe I've written the same line of feedback to a student 50 times, grading assignments, and I think, is there a better way to say this? And I'll ask one of these tools, revise this to be a little bit more positive but have the same meaning, and it'll give me like some suggestions for new feedback points. But I have not been uploading student work into these tools to say, ask it to summarize it for me. I think it would be really cool if students wrote, if you had them write a 3-page essay or something on a particular topic, and you could just ask the AI, does it hit these 3 points? And it would tell you or not. It would be interesting to see the results, but I have been myself hesitant to upload student work into these tools. I suspect the main suppliers of these tools to us, Blackboard, Canvas, Desire to Learn, it's not going to be too long before these things are probably built into the tools for us. They're going to have their own AI summarizer for the discussion or something, I bet. Hey, we got a winner for this session in the chat box. Tara Jones, you've been picked as the winner. Thanks, Laura, for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. If you just want to share your email address, I didn't want to interrupt the conversation. I just wanted to make sure that Tara knows that they are the winner. So just provide me your email address. But I want to continue the conversation. We have just over 5 minutes remaining. So continue.
Yeah, thanks for those comments, folks. Thanks, Laura. In my faculty development work, I've been telling people that if you're ignoring these tools, you're going to be fooling yourself. You need to become familiar with what they can do. Take a few of your assignments and play around with these tools to see what they give you. And a lot of us are going to have to rethink the types of assessments that we give, or the weighting that we give the assignments, or it's going to be a real head scratcher for a while on assessment in higher ed and what we need to be doing. Have any suggestions for a workshop for someone who doesn't work in it? So Laura is asking, do I have any suggestions for a workshop for someone who doesn't work in it? What type of, yeah, I guess it would depend on who your audience is and what you're wanting to learn. Um, if you, I'd be surprised if people here don't know.
Let me just come on.
Okay.
I'm a pre-advisor, and a lot of my students want to know how we incorporate it and ask me questions, about it. And they're more familiar with what AI is or what Chat GPT is. And I just like to take like an intro course and kind of be able to fool around in it just to know enough to be dangerous, and I know I'd like to have a hands-on course. Like, I know there's a lot of maybe at the community college or something, or even online, but there's just so many when you go out there to Google or to any of the search browsers. And I don't need fluff. I just
There are a lot of obviously, LinkedIn, Google, all these places are filled. YouTube are filled with these information. This individual's name that I just put in the chat box, Ethan Mollick.
Okay.
Ethan Mollick is an associate professor in the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He researches mostly entrepreneurism and in particular things involving technology. He and his wife have produced a series of videos, and he has a special blog. I highly recommend these resources for someone.
Okay.
If you, Laura, had if you had difficulty finding what I'm talking about, just email me and ask, and I'll be happy to look it up and point you to particular ones.
Okay. I mean, I kind of looked on some at LinkedIn, but some of them are just over my head. They talk to you like you already know, and I want to be dumb in some aspects and start from the ground up. Like, I have an idea, and then my son talks to me, and I'm like, what? Because they're learning it, and I just want to have a better understanding so that I can better communicate too with our freshmen and transfer students coming in. Oh,
yes.
Someone else recommended somebody. Okay. Okay, probably on LinkedIn. Okay.
It's one of the kind of issues with this is it's changing so fast that what was true in April isn't necessarily true today, for sure. But I do recommend Ethan Mollick. Melissa says so does Charles. Thank you, Melissa. I've had a lot of fun going out posting some comparisons of, hey, today I'm going to try this and see what I get, and it's been kind of interesting. All right, well, we have say 2 minutes remaining. It's been a pleasure. If you weren't here at the very beginning, this is my first ADEIL. I've been really pleased. Thank you to Rick and Laurie who helped this session get going, and for everybody who participated and stuck with me on a nice morning.
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. Hodges, for presenting, and for all of you attending. I'll put the conference evaluation link in the chat, and know that this is for the entire conference, so the overall. So you'll have this with you for the rest of your day if you want to fill it out now, if this is the only one you can attend, or if you want to fill it out at the end of the day, by all means, take it with you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the ADEIL conference. Thanks again, Dr. Hodges, and thanks again for everybody coming.
Sure. Here's a link in the chat box to my slides if anybody wants those. They're viewable. So anyway, everybody have a good day.